Dr. Challa Krishnaveer Abhishek says, "We the wise are not deluded by disorders and disease. Be strong, be healthy." వీరుడైన కృష్ణుడు భగవద్గీత జ్ఞానం ద్వారా కంఠాన్ని చల్లబరచడానికి చేసిన అభిషేకమే ఈ కృష్ణవీర్ అభిషేక్ చల్ల. So basically, this channel is dedicated to people suffering from communicative disorders and dysphagia. So for them, I wanted to give them a daily motivation of Bhagavadgita, Bible and Quran, and from other religious texts also. That we have hope. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give you that strength, build both mental and physical strength to take on communicative disorders and become healthy. So this is like a placebo. So this will act as a placebo. And hopefully you will be cured very, very soon. So this shloka, it is of chapter 2, shloka number 13 of Bhagavad-gita. So it goes like this. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyati. So basically, our soul traverses through various bodies in one lifetime during our life. And after our death, the soul leaves this body and enters another body, which we call it as reincarnation, because after death our body becomes dysfunctional. But during one's lifetime also, the soul traverses multiple bodies. You know how? Because as you know, the old cells in our body, they die and replenish into new cells. The old molecules are gone and new molecules form in our body. So it is said that within 1 year, 98% of our old molecules are all gone and our body is completely new molecules. So the soul traverses from childhood through youth to old age. It is actually traveling through various bodies. So for you people who are suffering from communicative disorders, this throat is actually not the one that is dysfunctional. The dysfunctional throat, which is filled with disease, which is filled with weakness, is actually gone, because the old cells, this throat, this muscle, this tissue, this formed by old cells, right? The old cells are all gone. Now we are only left with new cells. So you have another opportunity to communicate properly or to swallow properly. So God is giving you second opportunity, is what it is trying to say. So utilize this opportunity. Remember, this throat is brand new. Thank God for giving you this brand new throat every year. So your struggle is not forever. Your struggle is limited. God tests us, as you know. So this is just a testing phase. And when your new cells form, when the old cells replenish into new cells, the problem is all gone. And now you'll be perfectly fine. Thank you. Hi folks, this is Dr. Challa Krishnaveer Abhishek, PhD in Linguistics. In this lecture series, we'll talk about the swallowing function. So basically, we have anatomy and physiology. So anatomy talks about the structure, physiology talks about the process. So generally the swallowing, it happens through our mouth, using our mouth and throat, and then to the stomach, right? The food through our mouth, it travels through the throat to the stomach. That is a general normal swallowing process. But when you go in detail, there's a lot of things, there are a lot of aspects to be taken into account. So this is the mouth, and then you have your jaw, which assists your mouth, which assists in pushing the food inside, and your tongue, this part, your tongue, it plays a major role in pushing your food inside along with the jaw. So the jaw and the tongue together, they push the food that you chew inside. So when the food is pushed inside, there are two passages that you have to remember. So the first passage is the air passage. The second passage is the food passage. So the air passage, it starts with the nose, right? So you have nose, the nasal cavity, the nasopharynx. This is the nasal cavity and the nasopharynx. So you breathe in through your nose, you also breathe in through your mouth. But when you are eating, you generally breathe in through your nose. Okay? So what happens here is, when the food is pushed inside by the tongue, this part of the nose called the soft palate. You have hard palate and soft palate. This is your hard palate, and the inside uvula is your soft palate. This soft palate, what it does is, it closes the nasal cavity. It closes the opening of the nasopharynx so that the food doesn't enter our nose. And if you take a closer account, you have the windpipe here and you have the food pipe here. So when you talk about the windpipe, you should be familiar with generally larynx. Larynx is our Adam's apple that we generally talk about. So this Adam's apple moves when we swallow the food. So it also has hyoid bone which holds this part, and the entry point which contains the vocal folds is the larynx. And this pipe, the windpipe that we are talking about, is called trachea. The food pipe that we are talking about is called esophagus, and the entry part is basically oropharynx. Okay, so this is our epiglottis. So what happens is, this epiglottis, it closes the trachea when the food is moved inside by the tongue. So what happens here? What happens here is, the food doesn't enter the windpipe and the food enters the food pipe because of this action. So basically, the tongue pushes the food inside, and when the tongue pushes the food, immediately the epiglottis also closes the windpipe and it pushes the food towards the food pipe. Okay, so when you take a closer account, the food pipe, the upper chamber of the food pipe, you have UES, that is upper esophageal sphincter. So what happens here is, because you're breathing in through your mouth and through your nose, the air might enter your esophagus. But here the upper esophageal sphincter, it blocks the air from entering the esophagus, and the air only enters the trachea. So here when you're taking in food, the upper esophageal sphincter, it opens and lets the food slide inside the esophagus. So that's the part. So here, as you can see, you have neuromuscular and biomechanical or kinematic movements. So what are neuromuscular movements? Neuromuscular movements are movements which are controlled by your brain, your neurons and muscles. And biomechanical is basically one movement which depends on another movement. For example, here as I've told you, the tongue moves the food inside. So immediately when the tongue moves, the epiglottis also moves. So that is biomechanical. The neuromuscular is, so when the epiglottis closes, what happens is, the vocal cords, they close, they become tight so that the food doesn't enter. So that is intrinsic action. This intrinsic action is neuromuscular. The extrinsic action of the movement of the epiglottis is basically biomechanical, because it is based on the tongue. And we have three types of muscle functions. One is skeletal muscles. So these muscles are striated. Striated is nothing but these muscles are bundles which are in parallel to each other. You have this muscle, right? Your bicep, your thigh muscles. So these are basically skeletal muscles attached to your skeleton or to your bone. Okay, they are parallel to each other and they are voluntary. So you can control them, right? And you have smooth muscles. Smooth muscles are basically, they are not striated and you cannot control them voluntarily. They are involuntary muscles. Okay. For example, your esophagus. The food moves, the esophagus, what it does is it moves the food inside to your stomach, right? So it is not under your control. So similarly, you have cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles are again striated, that is parallel bundles, but again they branch. And cardiac muscles, the most important example that you know is your heart. So this is basically the process. And again here you have your thyroid, and here, so basically the bridges are the two ends of the windpipe. The two ends of the windpipe. The first, this end towards the outside, this end is your thyroid. This end towards the inside, which contains, these two ends contain the windpipe, right? So this, the other end towards the inside, it is cricoid. Okay, so this basically is the main basic function of the swallowing. So if any of these muscles, if they don't work properly, the swallowing gets impaired. So it is very, very important and crucial for all these muscles to work in sync with each other. Thank you.